Hey!
So, this was the idea. Two artists, both singer-songwriters, chatting during the COVID-19 lockdown in a Zoom room. We talked about a whole host of subjects we feel really passionate about and aired our views on life. This is Amir, and I'm Parry Ray. Welcome to our conversations, unfiltered and stripped back.
Well, I just thought I'd set the scene for everybody. This is Amir. He's an awesome artist. You need to check him out if you don't know him. I'm Parry. You'll need to check me out if you haven't checked me out before. So this was the idea. Last year I turned 50 and I've been taking stock of my life. And I kind of think you get to a point where you go, well, I think people do this throughout their lives, don't they? You kind of go, especially as artists, what kind of artist am I? What's important to me? We think about heritage, we think about growing up. And last year was a really drawing a line moment for me. So the idea was to talk to someone that was quite a bit younger than me, that has quite a lot of life experience, and is also a very passionate artist and creative, and just chat about, let's say, a lot of things that are dear to our heart, or a lot of things that we feel quite intensely about or passionate about. So working title, different generations, same. And you being you and me being me, we thought we'd do it with a little G&T in hand.
No doubt.
So if we kick off, Amir, why don't I kind of ask you and get your perspective, and then we kind of see where the conversation takes us. So and we're going to come on to this because you and I both intensely dislike this phrase, but for ease, to ease the listener in, the viewer in.
Yeah.
British Asian.
Yeah.
And I'm British Asian.
Right.
What cultural stereotypes do you feel you grew up with?
I don't know really, because when I was at school or whatever, I think I used to ask my mum why everyone was white and how come I'm not when I was young, when I was a kid. And then I was like, oh, how come he's black and I'm not? And there was not very many other Indian children in school. And then there was obviously a few more that joined as we got a bit older. But I think when you're a kid, you don't know stereotypes.
No. So was that primary? Would you say?
Yeah, primary school. Because I was born just outside Kenton. I was Northwick Park.
Okay.
And then I only lived there till I was 4, and then we moved to Buckinghamshire. So I live in just outside of Uxbridge now.
Very fancy.
I went to local school here, and then there was a lot more Indian people and a lot more black people as well and stuff. But it was just like everyone was just white at the beginning, and it was kind of weird.
Interesting, because I would have thought Buckinghamshire was actually very English middle class, but it was more diverse. You would say
it was. I think by the time I got to school, yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
melting pot around here.
Oh, that's really interesting. Because when I went to school, when I went to secondary school, well, all through primary school, I think I was probably the only Indian child. But remember, that was back in the dark ages. So
dark ages.
There weren't many of us about.
No.
But when I went to secondary school, so I went to quite a well-known public school in the heart of London. And out of 800 girls in the first year, I was the only Indian girl in the whole school.
Right. Crazy.
Absolute crazy. Obviously that changed as the years went on, but actually I agree with you, I didn't really notice it. But did you find that
kids don't look at anything? I mean, they see something different and that's about it to them. It's just, oh, that looks different. They still, when you're a kid, you still just want to kick a ball around or, climb a tree or, chase things, It doesn't matter what colour or culturally you're from, like where you're from. I think as a kid, you just don't care. I think all that kind of stuff you become conscious of as you get older.
So when did you become aware? When did you become aware of cultural stereotypes? Did you ever have a time when, I can definitely say there was a time when I found that I was almost living like a dual life?
Right.
Did you, what was your experience? Did you ever have that?
I don't know if I was living a dual life. I think it was kind of more, I could tell that some people were more uncomfortable around what I looked like than other people. I knew that for sure. Some would be, basically, you know, I've always said that racism is learned at home, or any of that kind of like thing. So even if like some kid from my class, you know, his dad might have just said like some kind of joke at an Indian or Pakistani's expense, that then sits in an 8-year-old kid's head, and he'll say it at school, and then I'll get a little bit annoyed about it, and then that's probably when things like that. I was probably about 8 or 9, just when I started playing drums.
And so and how did you react to that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I got in trouble for fighting.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah. I've been in a lot of trouble for fighting.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
So my experience of that is not a personal experience, but as a mother, I have 2 kids who are, I know you're a father as well. So my kids are 21 and 23. And I remember picking my son up once. He was 7. And there was a big party. And he just started this school. So we didn't really know everybody. And everybody was friends with everyone because they all wanted to get on. So I was offered to take some kids in my car. And Josh, my son, was sitting in the front. And he had 3 friends in the back. And one boy, and I think this is so pertinent to your comment, about where racism starts. One boy just like piped up and went, I don't normally like black people, but I really like you, Josh. And Josh kind of looked round. Josh looked at me first, he has these huge eyes, looked at me, and looked around and went,
how am I supposed to act today?
Well, he kind of went, I'm actually brown. I'm not like this. And then the boy corrected himself and he went, yeah, black or brown people. But I do really like you. And I just remember thinking, oh, I'm just going to log that. I mean, nothing came of it, but it was very interesting.
But at 7 years old, I bet that kid, if he knows that, if he remembers saying it, he'd be ashamed of himself.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's just that, you know, as a kid, you think that that's normal because dad says it, or mum says it, or grandma said it, or granddad said it, you know, and it's like, you know, your granddad might have had a fight with a white guy. That doesn't mean all white people are idiots. It's just that you had a fight with a white guy. How many Indian people have I had a fight with? I still have to be, I'm still Indian, you know?
Yes.
It is what it is. I think you get conscious of that as you get a bit older. And then when you get a little bit older than that, you realise, you know, being a grown-up is about is more about being a child again. Just bring that innocence back and understand that people are people, and that's it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think as a child, we have a lot of tolerance and we're very open and free and accepting. We're quite accepting of differences.
You're just interested and you love it. You know, that's it.
Absolutely. So when I was being brought up, so my parents are both from West Bengal.
Yeah.
I was born here, born in Hammersmith Hospital and grew up in northwest London. And for me, so I was bilingual from the beginning. My mum actually was a teacher, and that was quite Indian, wasn't it? It's the cultural heritage pouring out.
It's all kicking in now, episode 1.
It is. My mum was a teacher, and so she was very particular about, in the house, we spoke Bengali. When we left the house, we spoke English. And we never mixed the two, unless obviously we had English friends in the house. At home, we always ate Indian food. When we went out, well, we ate whoever's house we went to. And slowly I saw, even though she wanted me to have, in her mind, the best education, because that's one of the cultural stereotypes I absolutely did grow up with. I don't know where you stand on that one. I was allowed to pursue my hobbies of, you know, singing. I started singing at 6, playing the piano at 6, guitar at like 10. But there was a strong cultural thread You know, I did Indian classical dancing. I did Indian classical singing. We went to every pujo. We went to, which is a religious festival, in case you don't know. And as I got older, I realized there were 2 different tracks. I was allowed within reason to be quite westernized when I was out of the house, although there were very strict rules. My kids are always amazed. I say, I got married at 24.
Right.
Before I got married, I did not live with my ex-husband, lived in my father's house, and the curfew was 11 o'clock up until the age of 24 because I lived in my father's house.
Wow.
I know. So go on.
Yeah, very different.
Tell me. Tell me yours. And let's just set it in context for the people who don't know you as an artist. You are 28? 28.
Yeah.
There we go.
20. Yeah. Oh, I've shared my age. 21 plus back. 21 plus back.
Well, there you go. Well,
yeah,
I'm 21, so there you go.
Yeah, all good. Basically, I think, education was always in my head all the time. And I grew up with my paternal grandparents in the house as well.
Nice.
So there was my granddad, my grandma and granddad, my dad, my mum, me and my older brother.
Right.
So 6 of us. And then from Kenton, we moved to Jones Cross, which is where we are, just outside Uxbridge, and grew up here. And basically, I was always encouraged to play music, but they actually had to ask me, can you just turn the MJ video off so you can do your homework? You know, and I had that for years. And then obviously musical growth, you know, my brother's a couple of years older than me, so he started secondary school earlier than I did. So he comes home with rock music.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he starts playing me Foo Fighters and Red Hot Chili Peppers and stuff like that. I start playing drums and I get well into it. And then he starts playing guitar. And then every time that he's at school, because I used to get home an hour earlier, I would play on his guitar in his bed. And when I hear the front door, put the guitar down and run back into my room. So music was always there, always encouraged. But education, just like you said, was always really in my head. And my grandma, my dad's mum, was just religion mad.
Mm.
And I think at the time, obviously, you know, if someone said, what religion are you? My answer would always be, I'm a Hindu.
Yeah, yeah.
And then later on in life, I've decided I'm not anything. But I always say brought up Hindu, you know?
And I say that nowadays too.
I just, we can get onto like beliefs and things after. I just sort of think that I put it into perspective. I was always scared to say, no, I'm not a Hindu when I wasn't anymore. Do you know what I mean? I had to kind of just live like as if I was in the house a little bit. You
were scared of what
admitting
your
I
family might say,
yeah,
or what might actually happen.
Yeah, just a bit worried. Yeah, no, I mean, there wasn't like I didn't get threatened or anything. It was just I was a bit worried, you know, just like I don't want to upset anyone. And then eventually, when you grow up, you realise life's about upsetting everyone. No, I'm joking. It's about not upsetting yourself,
or maybe ruffling a few feathers if needed.
If never go out of your way to ruffle feathers, but if they get ruffled, it's not my problem.
Fair enough. I like your attitude. You see, for me, I would say a big thing was I didn't really have much choice. I had a lot more choice. Yeah, I did not have choice. And I wonder also, you grew up in a house with 2 brothers. And
One brother.
Yeah, but you were 2.
Oh, there's 2 of us. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Whereas I was an only child and I was a daughter. Right. So I think that's a huge cultural stereotype. Definitely. In Asian families. And I wonder if you've got
like zoomed in on you as well as an only child, I imagine, where you've got to kind of share it between 2 when there's 2 of us.
Totally. Well, going back to the academic thing, really interestingly, because my mum was a teacher as well, as I mentioned, she said to me when I was about 10, and she said, well, we really want you to go to a good school. And you really need to get a scholarship if you can. Because, you know, at the end of the day, my parents came over here.
No pressure.
From India. Yeah, no pressure. At 10. I think I sat every girls' school entrance exam there was available in London. But I think, so for me, a lot of it was unspoken. I kind of knew I had to be a certain way, the only way, because my mum had kind of created it as the right way.
Right.
A lot of things were unsaid, but I knew there were expectations there. And actually, up until about 12, 13, that was absolutely fine.
Sure.
I remember
But it always is. It always is until it kicks in at 12, 13, you know?
Yeah, I think it kind of kicks in with hormones, maybe.
Yeah, just I think as soon as this new wave of experience and feelings come in, you know, puberty, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when that kind of kicks in, I think I was sort of 10 or 11 when I started developing a bit of an attitude problem. The idea of like rebelling against your parents is just normal, and it's quite normal for your parents to see it. But I guess this is your quote, the Dark Ages. It's obviously going to be different to kind of what was acceptable with me.
But so if you think about it, really, this is like you chatting with your auntie, because I'm probably closer to your parents' age. A little bit of respect, please. But I
haven't sworn yet, have I?
No, not yet. I think I probably have. I think I probably have. But I think, so that's an interesting thing, because everything for me came back to respect. If I did something wrong, it was a lack of respect. Or if I didn't do what was expected as a good Hindu Indian girl, it was, you know, this is shameful. And it's just, you know, it's so disrespectful. And actually, I got so embroiled in all of that I lost sight of the fact, as you say, and I find it so refreshing that you say this, and I think my kids would say the same, that actually that bucking against what you're used to and that need to explore in a different way, that's normal. It doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you've been brought up, where you've been brought up. As humans and that development, that's totally normal.
It is. It's just like, you know how children like 2 and 3 want to write on the wall and stuff, you know, it's just children are little scientists, you know, they're just experimenting the whole time, right? So they want to find out if I throw this really hard marble at the window, I wonder what happens. When the glass smashes, they're not going to do it again, but they now know what will happen.
Absolutely.
And so when finally you get the courage because of your hormones and you're just pissed off, excuse my language, auntie, and you're just a bit annoyed about something, then you just you know, your parents trying to tell you something, you just say, oh, no. And it's like the first time you say no and you're like, oh, what have I done? But it's an experiment the whole time. It's like, what can I get away with and what can't I? You know, I mean, that happens when you're 4, then it happens when you're 14, it can happen when you're 24.
Happens when you're 40.
And then when you're 34, you sort of think, now I'm just going to rebel against my body and drink all of this and try and get to the gym tomorrow.
No, absolutely. Well, you do that when you're 40, for sure.
Luckily, I'm not there yet. I've got enough.
No, you're not.
I'll stay in the gym until then.
But so what's interesting is, and if anyone doesn't know, you need to check out Amir's stories, because he's always doing crazy boxing and skipping, actually showing off with the whole skipping thing.
I've become a show-off.
It's like hell, and put up some mad skipping video at some point.
I'll get on that.
So what's interesting is, what would your experience, because it feels like, and I'm delighted to hear it, it was much more open, your upbringing in a way. What about those things that we have that are embedded in Indian culture? Guilt, shame.
Mm.
Do you find they featured a lot in your upbringing or not really?
I think verbally, just like your usual stuff that you'd hear as a little Indian kid. So like, you should marry an Indian person, and then, you know, you should marry a Hindu, you know, just like little bits that get planted in your head, which thankfully, me being me, it's up to me really. It's not up to anybody else. And
right.
I think because I was, and I don't think I'm a rebel, but I'm sure plenty of other Indian people, British Asians, think I am a bit of a rebel, because I don't adhere to anybody else's idea of what I should be or what I should write about in my songs, what kind of instrument I should play. I picked up the drums, the guitar, and the bass. I didn't pick up the sitar, harmonium, and tabla.
Yeah.
And that's because of my surroundings. It's also because the thing is, my dad moved here when he was 11. He was born in Punjab.
Oh, okay.
And when he was 11, moved to Kilburn, North London, Northwest London.
Very near where I grew up.
Yeah, and my mum, even though she was born in Leicester, her parents are Gujarati, right? So they're both brought up their way. And then you've got one westernized Punjabi man and an already westernized Gujarati lady
yes.
to bring up 2 kids who basically, we are very English kids.
Yeah, so you're a bit of a head start.
But we care about our tradition and stuff like that, like little traditions. I think my brother makes less noise about the ones than I do. But I'll do things to make mum and pop happy. I know it's making them happy, so I'm happy to do certain things, like sit around a oven, and pray. I'm not praying, but me being there is obviously nice for them.
So that's really interesting, because I used to so the pleasing thing, I think, is a massive thing in art.
Yeah, because I think I pick and choose when I'm going to be nice and when I'm going to be me.
No, but I think that's really for me, that's really refreshing, because I feel that you clearly had a really strong sense of who you were all along. I mean, I would say I did too, but I felt, and my peers were the same, where actually, if we wanted to have any sort of teenage life, I tried to tell my parents the truth, and it led to so many arguments and many, you're not allowed to go out, you're grounded, that eventually I had to succumb to the way of my friends, which was just lie, which seemed just wrong, but there was no other way. It was crazy.
It felt wrong, because I understand. I kind of feel a little bit like that. When I was, all of my friends that were, white English friends, were allowed to be at home by themselves and have friends over and Bacardi breezers in the fridge. And I said I was invited to my friend's house. Oh, the parents going to be there. And I told the truth and said no. And they said, right, well, you're not going. And so I'm like, right, okay, I can't go. Now I'm the least cool person in school. I've got the best haircut, but the strictest parents.
Yeah.
What's that about? So basically, it does get to a point. I mean, I've got no problem saying any of this on the net. I'm 28, quarantined with my parents. We've obviously been pissed together during the last few weeks. So lots of funny stories have come out. So no problem about saying any of this now. But
we might have to cut this in another one.
Eventually, we ain't cutting shit. Don't worry about it. Unless you want to. But I'm just saying, I eventually wouldn't say started lying. I just sort of said, right, I'm going to this person's house, parents will be there. And then there's little white lies. Yeah, parents will be there. Don't worry, no alcohol. Pick me up at this time. And we'd have got absolutely no sleep, and we'd have been smashed up to pieces on Archers and Bacardi breezers. So yeah, it was just weird. It's a different cultural thing where your teen life is a double life.
I agree. Well, so yeah, that's exactly what I meant by the dual life. But I think that started for me even earlier, before I realised. I was never a fan of lying, but I think what I did wherever possible for an easy life was just omit details. And I realised when I was a teenager, the only way I was ever going to have fun was just to go and sleep over at a friend's house. Because
same here. And then you always get asked the question, why do you need to stay over?
Oh my God.
No, you don't get it. I don't want to come home tonight. Pick me up tomorrow, please.
Well, my dad was a wonderful man, and he passed away a long time ago. But my dad, I remember saying to me, was when I was about 15 or something, he said, why does the party have to start at 9? He said, can't it start at 4? And I'm thinking, you bugger, because my dad was quite a cheeky chappy when he was young. So I know he was off having loads of fun, but it's that weird hypocrisy, I can say this as a parent, where it's sort of like, say what I'd say, don't do as I do. He often said that. He was like, why does the party have to start so late? So I thought, okay, I need to navigate my way around this. I'm just going to stay at a friend's house.
Yeah.
And even when I was at university, when I had a boyfriend, and we were going away for the weekend. Sorry, luckily my mum doesn't have internet, so I'm all right.
So you're good.
Yeah. So we're all good. But even at university, I would leave messages by the phone for my flatmates, because I'd be off for a weekend with my boyfriend, to say, should my parents call, this is the story. Should my parents
I've never had to resist to that. Fine, yeah.
It's crazy. But it's kind of embedded. So why, I've never really asked this question to anyone before, but why do you think it is embedded in our culture?
I think there's two things. I think, one, they've done it before.
Yeah.
I think they did it all before, which is why they're hard on us, because they don't want us to make the same mistakes, which really it ultimately means having loads of fun. But also on top of that, I think, you know, like your generation or my parents' generation will have had the shame a lot more on you than on me. I mean, it's still happening. I mean, I've got Indian friends who are sort of made to feel ashamed of having certain feelings and things. And not that they are ashamed, but from the parents, they're kind of made to feel like it. Eventually, if you keep doing that and then you kind of cower down, eventually you're just going to burst into just falling out with your parents. No one wants that. So I don't understand why people or parents, or especially of our culture, want to suppress so much. I don't get it.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, check out Parry Ray and Harmony on YouTube. I'd love to hear your comments. And come and say hi on our socials at Parry Ray and Harmony and at Amir Official UK.